So welcome back, and I thank you for being part of our evening. Let me urge you to start joining us already on all our social media platforms at ETV Ghana. So at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Twitter, at ETV Ghana, you can find us. Also, our WhatsApp lines will be open very early. I urge you to start sending us your text messages, and the number is 020-2222-054. I repeat, 020-2222-054. So we are still in the month of August, okay? And so let me just remind you that the month of August is our we're going to give you a lot of information on insurance and financial literacy, and this is being brought to you by Holad. You can get all this education on all our GMABC platforms, YFM and on Happy FM, ETV Ghana, just as we are doing. And at some point, I'll be showing you a tip from on insurance and financial literacy that has to be coming from Holad as well. Let me also remind you that today is the World Humanitarian Day, and a time to remember both the victims of humanitarian crisis all around the world and those who fearlessly venture into dangerous regions to bring them much needed aid. On World Humanitarian Day, the world commemorates humanitarian workers killed and injured in the course of their work. And we honor all aid and health workers who continue despite the odds to provide life-saving support and protection to people most in need. Obviously, it falls in line with the time that we have a lot of COVID flying around in and here. And so yes, we need to. Is there a celebration? No. Well, we just commemorate them. It's very important that we do so. So today, I did say earlier that there's something very important that we'll be discussing, and it's a bit. It's one of the issues that are very, should I say, emotional? Well, perhaps to some extent. But today we are discussing married and happy. Are you married and then you are not happy? What should you do? And that's what we'll be discussing. Now, there are two gentlemen with me here. Obviously, my favorites. And the first person, Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur, medical doctor and a clinical psychologist. Doc, Akwaaba, you're looking fine, no? Charlie, because the way you look today, I'm a doctor. Yeah, I'm a doctor today. And also with me, I have Reverend Benny Osei. Reverend Benny Osei is a performance consultant and a coach. And he does a lot of other things. I'll be telling you as time goes on. Benny, Chief, you are much closer, so I can stretch and do the booster. Charlie, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
How was the week for you?
Stressful.
Stress is everywhere.
Charlie.
But we have to fix it.
You know how it is.
Yeah, fixing it.
Yeah.
Well, we thank God. Good to see you again. So today we are discussing married and unhappy. It's like a question. Are you married? You know how people do have the advert. Are you married and unhappy? Okay, so but today we are not doing that. So married and unhappy. What should we do if you find yourself in that situation? And probably we'll start from asking a particular question. So what can make some marriage unhappy? Like what makes a marriage unhappy or an unhappy one?
Okay, all right. Since Doc is looking my direction, let me start. Well, thank you very much, Nana, and a very good evening to your cherished viewers. I think so many things contribute to a person's happiness. I always say that people cannot determine your joy, but obviously they might have an influence on your happiness. It's your happenings that creates your happiness. So the things that happens around you will definitely contribute to your happiness. Now, I also say that two things contribute to a man's happiness in life: your achievements and your relationships.
Okay.
So the more you achieve, the more exciting and happy your life becomes. The more your relationship works, and it's, if you like, very daring, all right? The more you enjoy it, the more happy you are in life. Now, when things begin to go sour, it's by virtue of the fact that the happenings around the relationship might not be what you expect. The Bible says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desires of a man comes to pass, it's the gift of life. All right? So as long as the things you expect are happening, you will be happy. But when your expectations are not being met, you would have challenges. And these expectations will span in so many things that could be considered. And one, your spouse; two, the conditions that are at home, the conditions of the relationship, the kind of communication that exists, in that relationship, and the kind of relationship you have with other third parties that are linked to that marriage or that relationship. They all can contribute. And of course, we can start taking the box on the different things. But, you know, in a quick summary at this introduction, I could say that everyone that is connected contributes or influences the relationship to an extent. And their activities and the happenings around the relationship would affect it for you to be happy or not. And of course, when your expectations, and everyone has expectations, the management of that expectations will determine whether you will be happy or not.
Interesting. That's quite a handful. But, Doc, what could make some marriage unhappy?
Yeah, so to add on to what he said, first of all, I'll make a statement that marriage is supposed to be a blessing. That's why God created. Otherwise, it wouldn't have even come up at all. You know, what's the point? So when marriage is not becoming a blessing, then it means that there may be something basically wrong that we're not paying attention to, right? And we'd also have to be clear that men have different things that makes them happy. Women have different things that makes them happy. And those two things, those two differences creates the conflict. So just because we're different in itself will create some conflict. But when your choice of a spouse, you know, is not considered well such that the differences are too many, it widens the conflict or it compounds the issue.
The issues.
You know, so whatever happens, even if you meet the right person, you marry the right person, because the two of you are different, and the fact that even if you, for a man and a woman, just because you're a man and just because you're a woman, that alone will create some problems, you know. But who you choose becomes, what do you call it, a major determinant on how unhappy you're going to be because of that difference. So you have two different people trying to make sense out of a small space. That difference alone can create some kind of problems. You know, so the differences in marriages has to do with who you choose to go on that journey. There was a 99-year-old man who was my client, you know, and I asked him, he's married for 70 years. And I asked
70 years. Did you ask him what's keeping them together?
Is it?
It's one thing I like to ask.
Oh, no, so I that's the question I asked. He married for 70 years,
Yeah.
and they're happy because if you go and old lady and old man, you know, they're quite sad. He says generally he's been very, very happy with his marriage. I asked what the secret was. And I thought he would talk about communication, sex, you know, food, you know, those things people really, the details of it. And he made a statement. And you know, usually older people, if they make statements, you have to think about it for months. It's deep. You know, he made a statement that I had to really think about. He said, marry her, marry the right person. If you are not sure, be sure, because it's for life. That was his answer to a happy marriage. So his focus was on the fact that the person you choose becomes the most important determinant of how happy the marriage is going to be like. And that is your choice. You know, so I coined it in a statement that who you choose is what you get.
Who you choose is what you get.
Yes, who you choose is what to get.
That's correct.
So actually, happiness begins before marriage and not during marriage.
Not during marriage.
So the condition of your relationship will determine the condition, you know, in marriage, because it's virtually the same person. The difference between single people and married couples is that the first one, they don't live together. The second one, they live together. That's the only difference. It's the same person, the same condition, the same mindset, the same attitude, the same behavior. You know, so whatever is creating a distress, you know, before marriage. So actually people divorce before they marry.
Interesting. So you see, there seem to be a lot of unhappy marriages today. Obviously, the reason we are discussing this because it's come up severally, like on our radar, people texting. So are couples making the wrong choices, or are they going into marriages for the wrong reasons?
I think that people are influenced to make certain decisions about their marriages, and I think what Doc said is very, very profound. You know, the beauty about marriage is two people agreeing that they're doing this. When the agenda is uniform, it's unison, and they work towards that, it becomes something that's a beautiful journey to have. But when you are in it and it's a different agenda, trust me, this is going to be a very difficult journey for both of you. You are talking about you know, people not having, you know, happy marriages today, and what is contributing or
Yeah,
fueling.
are they making the wrong choices,
know,
or they are going into it for the wrong reasons?
I think both are part of what is constituting us today. So I see a beautiful lady, you know, she's covetous, you know, she says all the right things I want to hear. She looks like a trophy wife, you know, someone that I can walk into a place and have all the attention in the world. I mean, for how long can that survive the real test of time? You know, quite recently, we were having a conversation with a group of people. They were talking about how education influences or creates the atmosphere in your marriage. Is it important to consider education as part of your factors? And from the discussion, it came out to be that yes, definitely. Because when you marry someone who at least is informed to some, you know, level and understands certain things, it makes your conversation, your planning, thinking through and talking through issues about life, you know, a different ballgame. Today, unfortunately, we are distracted by what we see more than the real things, the real things that matter in the relationships. And this is what is causing so much. You know, the distraction of how the person looks, maybe how he talks or walks. And these things can change. Maybe what car he drives, where he works, and, you know, what's in his bank account. You know, these things can change. Someone woke up one Monday, her entire house burnt down. People's businesses burned down in just one day. So if that is what you put your heart and your mind on, and the next day it's no more, then your love come crashing. So, I mean, people are making the decisions based on many wrong choices. And of course, it's a major contributor, you know, like some of the things he said.
Doc, who are unhappy the most? The men and or the women?
Well, you know, personally, right, there are certain general statements flying around, which is not true. Right, so if that becomes people's perception, they may see marriage in a very negative light.
What are some of those statements?
One, there are more women than men. It's not true.
You are sure?
There are more men than women.
Oh no, look, you are the first to say this.
So you
Maybe
Google.
he's done a study.
So you Google. Anybody who is watching can go and Google.
That there are
Start
more men than women.
Starts global. Even when you look at countries, you know, there are more men than women. It's even about 102 to about 102 men to 100 women. So there are more men than women, and there are reasons for it. You know, God made it such. You see, men die earlier, risky lifestyle, risky, you know, jobs here and there. So even if they die, there will be some match.
Some
balances.
And if you look at the marital years, maybe between 15 and 50, you realize that the numbers are virtually 1:1. So that is there. So people can't say that, okay, because there are more women, men should marry more. It's not true. So people should go and Google. You can even let your producer.
You are busting people's bubbles.
So no, so you can anybody can just check right now.
No.
Rev, you can just
Yeah, while you're
so
talking.
Google. So Google
While
right
you're
now.
talking,
No,
I'll
Rev, check for me. I
Because
want
it's revelatory
Yes,
for
I
me
want
as
to.
well.
Statistics between
It's
men
the first.
and women.
I'm
The
hearing
only
this the first
time women become more than men is when after 65, because men die earlier. And God made it that way because it's the women who are the grandmothers who take care of the kids. So you actually need the women around more in the older years. But you Google, you realize what I'm saying is true. Two, if you look at the statistics about divorce rates, which probably may be a reflection of those who are married, right, and are happy, right, you realize that the values are virtually, they're not significant. If you look at the rates. And some, even in the 1960s, you may even have high values than recent years.
That's correct.
So if you are there, you think that every marriage is collapsing. It's your marriage, not every marriage. You see, there are some perceptions around that is not true.
That's correct.
The third factor, which is also a fact, is that I think that those days, there were unhappy marriages, but they had a mindset about marriage that made them stay regardless. A lot of the young people can attest to the fact that their parents were not happy. They may have some happiness, some, you know, enjoyment here and there, but they will tell you that they had some unhappiness on many levels. But this time around, people don't choose to stay. Those times, they had the mindset that I'm married to this person, more TBR, I will stay.
That's now.
So we may not say that marriages now are even worse off. Obviously, there are factors that we may may have caused some kind of dissatisfaction. And one of the two factors that I think is responsible for a lot of the problems now is that, one, those days when people are going to marry, it's a whole family decision. They go investigate the guy's background. Before you even accept a proposal, you discuss with your parents or people who can advise. Now it's not there. People can date for years, parents don't know.
More in the urban areas.
Yes, more in the urban areas. And even if parents talk about it, they would ignore parents' advice and they will go ahead. And I have come to realization that a lot of marriages that parents were against, they really don't end well. The distresses are more. Because when you're in love, you can't see much. Those sitting behind are the ones who can actually notice certain things. But those days, it was a community marriage. It was a whole offended. You finished checking, right?
Yes.
What is the value?
Okay, so I'm still getting, generically, it's 1-to-1. But there are still countries that have more.
But global statistics
global
is 1-0.
So it's not as though
yes,
one is
1-0.
higher.
No, it's not 1-0 to 200 women.
I see.
So I'm saying, so those days it was a family decision.
Yeah.
They even send people to go look at your background, investigate before they can agree. But now it's changed. So individuals are going against parents' advice, going against
all the red
counselors,
flags.
all the red flags, and they enter and they realize that no, what they were saying was true.
Yeah.
So that was then. So that was the difference between then and now.
And now.
The second is that then people were actually willing to actually
Work it out.
and change themselves in order to be able to accommodate each other.
Compromise and adjust.
Compromise and adjust. But now it's not there. People know that, okay, I can now divorce easily. Or I can, what do you call it? If you do, I'll walk away.
I'll walk away.
And I can be independent myself. I don't even need marriage.
All this equality thing.
And their reasons for marriage is quite different than then.
I see.
And that is what is creating I think the major difference. But there were very, very unhappy marriages, which were very, very
But you see, my
marriages.
question was,
Yes.
between the man and the woman, who is usually the unhappier one?
I think that it's really depending on what is creating the unhappiness, and also what the coping strategy of each one, and whether they are receiving external support in dealing with the unhappiness or not. If, for example, you have issues with your spouse, and you have friends who entertain you and make you, even
you are most likely to walk away.
You are most likely not to be.
You ignore.
You
won't focus on working it out.
You will ignore. And usually when spouses talk a lot and you realize that they've stopped talking, it means that probably they are using other ways to cope with the problem.
Yeah.
Or that. So depend on your own coping strategies and also the support systems you have. It may affect the influence. But usually when there are marital problems, the burden is more on the women than the men. Because women usually continue with the kids and everything else. And even societal expectations about the both sexes can create some kind of more unhappiness with the women than the men. And usually men are not too attached to things.
Yeah.
Men move on easily than women. So that can also create some kind of, yes.
Maybe just to add one point as to why today a lot of people think that there were no challenges in those days. And once again, I beg to differ, and I really, stand with what you're saying. In those days, we don't have technology that brings issues out too fast. Today, things happen and it's out there in the next minute. In those days, there were no phones, no internet, nothing. So a lot of our parents really went through, really disgusting, tough times, but there was nowhere to really air it out. Today, there are over 500 radio stations. I can call into anyone. There are TV stations, there's internet, and it's free now that I can post anything I want on any platform.
You can call a friend anytime,
it will catch fire. Right. So today, what has rather changed is the information around this, challenges within marriages that are coming out, which in those days they were not coming out.
Interesting. Well, so it means that a couple of years ago you would have to walk about a mile to go report or complain about your husband. But now
for 10 years.
It's just a phone call away. Well, we'll see. We'll talk about it more. Let's go on this break. We'll be back shortly. Please stay with us. Oh, welcome back. And that was your insurance tip, as I mentioned earlier. And that was also brought to you by Holad Insurance. Of course, if you want to know more, get to them and you get to learn and also make sure you are insured. It's very, very important. It's part of growing up and making sure you are making the right choices and decisions in life. We are back. So, you know, this finding out of that research, I need to go and find it. Now I want to see it myself.
Yourself.
Yes, and be sure, because
The 1:1.
the 1:1 is still, playing on my mind. But I'll go through it and I'll see what exactly it is. I'm not saying Doc. I mean, Doc. I know Doc will always.
Oh, no, of course. I checked it out.
And of course, you checked and then you saw it. Hey, 1:1. Son, I don't know, 1:1. Anyway, so there's this thing also that goes around that. I mean, almost every marriage starts well, has its own downs, and I mean, there's always the unhappy phase. Most marriages go through the unhappy phase and then find happiness again. How true is this?
Yeah, so if you look generally, the first 3 years becomes critical. Most of the divorces happen in the first 3 years, even if it physically happens after 20 years. Right? So, for example, some people divorce after 10 years of marriage, but the decision really is in the first 3 years. Because the first 3 years is actually the test time to really know the person on a daily basis. And when that finding is not satisfactory, they actually decide. Emotionally, they may be gone. Psychologically, they may be gone. And those who linger on and don't have the courage to even divorce, they hope that things will get better until it's really up there and they realize they are choking and they just walk out. Even if it happens 20 years. And most of the marriage, if you ask, they will tell you that when I started so they always go back. Sometimes even just before, the wedding ceremony, there are some conflict. They know in themselves there is this unhappiness, this conflict in there, this unsettledness, I want to back out, I want to. Then they also, it will be well. And then when they marry, the first 3 years, right, all the mistakes happen, all the differences show up, all the conflicts, seem to come up. What their lifestyle and what they're involved in, what they do and how they want to live their lives, and the decision and everything happens around that time. Then when the dissatisfaction is just too much, some people will just decide to walk away around that time, or actually try and take steps to work it out until, if they realize that things are not really working out, then they just back out, depending on even what they believe in.
Okay.
If, for example, they are staunch Christians and the Bible actually discourages, does not totally negate, divorce, but discourages is because of the impact on everything else, right? If they are, for example, they are Christians or Muslims or other religious, then they actually hope and trust God that it works, or they feel too guilty even to back out. And they stay on for some time. So the first 3 years is actually very, very critical in the discovery and all the mistakes and forgiveness and all that. And if they are not satisfied with whatever they found, then the decision actually begins around that time. Emotionally, they are gone.
They are gone. And I think there was a point I learned something about how the women are even the first to, so they are able to, they make their decisions much earlier, but they're able to stay on for a long time until such a time that they feel, it's enough. And by the time the men have not even adjusted, it usually becomes... Anyway, so let me find out this also. So is it possible to survive an unhappy marriage?
Oh, yes.
It's possible?
Definitely.
You are not happy, but you can survive
There
it.
are so many things.
How?
Okay. So one of the things I've come to learn is you might not have everything you wish for, but you have the mindset to work things out. And also there is the hope that things can get better. The truth is no condition is permanent. So I might be unhappy today, but there might be packets of things that rise that could change, certain quartets of what we have. I would have wished we're doing 100%, but hey, I will embrace the 65 and keep working at it. You see, marriage requires a lot of compromise. It requires a lot of adjustment to be done. See, you've lived your life maybe 25, 30 years by yourself, and then you're meeting up with someone who might have done the same. Suddenly, you're living in one place, and just like Doc said, within the first 2-3 years, you discover so many things that dating and courtship don't give you. And I keep telling people, dating courtship is a joke. It's nothing. The real game really starts when you start living together. Then you see the differences between yourselves, and hence you start finding ways to adapt and adjust what can actually help you to go through tough times. Some people really see that this is not working, but they cushion themselves in a way that can make them at least live on. Some of the motivations they have are because of kids, because of their children. They ignore some things. They know it's not working, but they will let go some things, just to buy time. So like Doc said, maybe the decision was made in the first year, but they stay on after 12, 15 years, then they know, what, the kids are okay. That was the only thing that was holding me down. They are fine. They can hang, so let me take the move. So yes, people can survive. And sometimes, luckily, or should I say supernaturally, by the time you're giving yourself time to work out,
it works
somewhere around that time, it works out, and you regain the trust, the energy, the love back again, and you live on. So yes, it's possible to go through unhappy marriage over a period, but things can change.
Doc, does it impact our physical well-being in any way?
Everything. Marriage is one of the most important stresses of life. And a lot of people actually develop all kinds of health problems just
Did
because
you say important stresses?
Yeah, it's one of the important stresses.
Okay.
It causes a lot of stress, depending on what it is. Let me say this, that there are 5 areas that causes stress in marriage and can have a negative health outcome. One, the differences.
Okay.
Right, and even like you said, if it's a lot of marriages are unhappy marriages because they actually focus on the minor things, make it a big issue. Instead of working those things easily out, it becomes an issue. For example, you like dirtying the house. It's not a major issue. It's minor, such that it's just changing your lifestyle.
That's correct.
Like you like putting things around. You throw your shirt anyhow. It shouldn't be a reason for divorce. You get my point? It's so petty that when you actually change in that direction, you're actually becoming a better person for yourself. So the differences can actually cause some kind of stress. And also the next is disappointments. When you are disappointed about the marriage because of unmet expectations, then the demands that the other spouse places on you and external people place on the person can actually be stressful enough and cause some negative health outcome. The next one has to do with delays. When whatever you're expecting to happen, maybe kids, or some financial breakthrough, or some job opportunities, and or things lifestyle changes and stuff that you think that things should have worked out by now and it's not happening, it can actually be stressful. And it can cause some kind of health problems. Then distractions. Distractions are things that actually take your mind away from the marriage and takes your mind to other things. It can be your job, it can be other friends, it can be extended family, it can be what you think is more important than the marriage. Then also distressing situations like abuse, right? Abuse, whether it's physical or sexual or emotional or verbal or neglect. Abuse can be, create a certain toxic environment. And abuse has its own health implications. It really causes a lot of damage. And also other health issues that may come up, chronic health issues that may come like hypertension, diabetes, and depression, anxiety, stress, and all those things. All those things are part of the things that can come up with the marriage if the marriage is an unhappy one. And there are people who are really going through all kinds of stressful situations. Now when you marry and kids also come in, kids are they are also another level. They're also another level, especially when you have a child who is unwell. That alone can be a source of distress for the couple. Or when, for example, the couple were not ready for this child and this child came, or the child is associated with a painful event in the marriage. So that child becomes a reminder. So you are a child, you are not responsible for anything, but your birth came with something. Or if, for example, your relatives have been, you are not giving birth and your relatives have been on you and now the child comes, that child becomes a special kid. So whatever happens to that child affects everything else because that child becomes a precious child and the marriage actually is surviving because of that child.
But Doc, before you proceed, what about mental health also? Does it have any?
So any stress,
it's
any stress
ways.
or fear-related problem or even chronic health issues finally ends up with mental health issues. So if you are not able to cope and adjust well, you may go into some form of depression. And depending on the support systems, we have premarital counseling, but we don't have postmarital counseling.
In some places.
In some
they
places.
do, but it's very minimal.
Yes, minimal. But that is when all kinds of things come up and it becomes, and trust me, you can be a psychologist or a medical doctor, a
doesn't
pastor,
matter.
and you still have problems.
Yeah,
And trust me,
over you, eh?
oh no, it's
No,
and
Charlie,
if you look at even suicide,
Yeah.
suicide is more. If you look at professions, lawyers, doctors, teachers, pharmacists, farmers, suicide is highest amongst health professionals than any other profession.
Wow.
You can also Google that one.
That I know.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because of the stresses. So knowledge and skill doesn't protect you from marital challenges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need, some kind of support or something to be able to deal with.
So you know what? I mean, I think at some point we spoke about when there are kids involved, and then it brings me to asking that. So in the situation where there is an unhappy marriage, okay, and then obviously there are kids involved, how do we protect these kids? Because then they come across as those who are likely to even suffer the most. How do we protect these kids?
I think the challenging bit is not letting the kids see what is going on.
Yeah, but how?
Okay, so that's why I said that it's the challenging bit.
Yeah.
You see, there would be, like I said, a lot of compromises.
Uh-huh.
These compromises even have to do with being emotionally yourself, which could be suppressing your emotions, could have other health implications, so your mental health issues, are kicked in there.
Yeah.
When kids are involved, they are easily triggered by the different things they're exposed to, easily. And when it's not managed well, when you're exposing the kids to some of these fights, some of these arguments, and sometimes you don't fight and argue before but they realize that the communication at home is not what it used to. Because they know when you're happy and when the vibe in the home is up. But when things have changed and you're not talking to each other, you're not shouting at each other, but you actually walk past, you're not saying anything, they pick these things up. And when it's not managed well, it starts affecting them. There are instances where you realize that the child is watching you and watching your partner, and seeing your reactions. And she knows, she can feel. And so that is the intuition that sometimes these kids have. And when they are not strong enough mentally, it would have an impact. And I think that many times when parents, or when couples have kids and they are having marital issues, they must be able to plan effectively how to behave when the kids are present. At least have some level of understanding.
Then you might as well be solving the issue then, because then how do you both plan how to behave? Because
the truth is there are those that make a decision and they agree that for the sake of the kids, whatever we do must be not in their presence. We can fight in the room, do whatever, but when we come out, we play the role until such a time. All right. So there are people who will make those decisions and come to that understanding, and they both understand they are buying time just for the sake of the kids to have them protected.
Look, how do we protect them beyond what?
Well, it's difficult. A toxic environment is a toxic environment, and like he's saying, that decision has to come up such that we just have to be adults. We just have to decide to be adults. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming that you can even break down, in front of your kids. And one of the dangers with conflict amongst parents and kids has to do with the fact that sometimes parents will use those kids as coping strategies and the conduits for complaints. So you have a child, a daughter or a son, and you keep talking negative. You talk to your child because you can't talk to your spouse. Or when something happens, you actually go complain to your child, because you need someone to talk to. And these couples, they form relationship with a particular kid because they have some qualities that the parents like, and they become, the middleman between the two. So mother is saying this to the son, father is also saying something else to the son. So the child is actually trapped in between two conflicts, and doesn't even know what to do, along the line. So I would advise that in cases where you think the problems are so overwhelming that you cannot solve the problems, you just have to be adults. And you better walk away from each other than to dwell in a toxic environment that has its own generational impact, right? Because even if you get a good person, marriage is challenging. So your ability to handle the differences and the issues with time, that is what creates the difference. But there are some situations where you just have to even as psychologists, we even tell you to even
Walk away.
walk away.
Walk away. Wow.
You know, there are three major things that walking away becomes reasonable when all efforts to solve doesn't work.
One.
When there is some kind of break in trust. It can be on any level, fidelity, whatever. It can be on that level, right? Two, when your life is in danger, when there's abuse in any form or shape, and that abuse is really affecting you, especially when it's physical. Because physical abuse will end your life now. Emotional abuse may take time, right? You may take your own life through suicide or something, but physical abuse can end your life immediately. So when there's abuse. And three, when you realize that everything around your life is being affected because of the marriage, especially in fulfillment of your purpose in life, you know, and also when it affects your relationship with God. So these three things become critical, that sometimes, depend on the issues, it becomes non-negotiable because your destiny, your life itself is at stake.
Yeah.
You know, and you cannot be able to thrive in such an environment. And all steps are taken. And we don't even advise divorce straight away because, you know, sometimes some people rush it and later realize that Charlie, afraid no one's saying, you know, now someone else is in the picture and Charlie, things are really booming. So every counselor or pastor will tell you to go ahead with separation first. You know, where the two of you are apart each other, and just to be able to evaluate things well. You know, sometimes when you stay apart each other, then you realize, oh, Charlie, should I shoot them?
It wasn't that bad, eh?
No, it wasn't that bad. You know, you actually have a self-reflection. You even look at your own life and stuff like that. Oh, now you're able to reflect better. So you actually give yourself time to but you also don't, especially when it comes to abuse. You know, abuse is red flags. Abuse itself is a red flag. That one, we even tell you, don't solve the situation whilst you are with the person in the house. It's better you separate yourself before you deal with it, because stresses trigger abusive, kind of, situations.
Okay. Okay. Let me just take this from one of our viewers, and this says, "Good evening to all of you. Today, your show is very informative. Thank you. Please, may I know what it means by the statement working towards one's marriage, even when the kids are involved?" All right. So I'm going to go on a break. When we are back, we'll look at what our viewer is asking. Please stay with us. We'll be back shortly. All right, so welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are still discussing on happiness in marriage and what we should do. And at this point, the phone lines are open. We'd encourage you to call, phone in, ask us questions, share your thoughts, share your experience, and let us hear what it is for you also. The phone line is 0555-657278. I repeat, 0555-657278. So, folks, let's go to what our viewer was asking. So, please, may I know what it means by the statement working towards one's marriage even when the kids are involved? She needs help. What does that statement mean? Working towards one's marriage even when kids are involved.
You want to take it?
Probably, if I'm to comment, I would say that taking steps, to make the marriage work, and those steps should protect the kids, from the negative, influences of whatever is happening.
All right. So then delving into that, let me find out what are some of the qualities we should exhibit to keep our marriages happy.
Well, one of the things. So let me speak in the context, in generic context of marriage. I think that everyone have their own values. They have their own expectations. One of the things that really helps marriages is understanding your spouse. Now, the truth is, you don't even know yourself totally. So understanding your spouse means that you need to be able to know the person and understand them. This is something that happens over a period, but there must be the commitment to want to, achieve that.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
All right, there must be the commitment to understand, because the more you understand a person, the better you relate. The more you understand something, the better you handle, that particular thing. I've seen people who have phones, who buy iPhones, and practically all they do is WhatsApp, make phone calls or receive calls. Whereas the device can actually do more. So the more you know of a thing, the better it is for you to relate and also have value with it.
Okay, let me just speak to this caller. Hold on, you add value. We'll start from value.
Okay, that's fine.
Good evening, caller. Your name and where you are calling from?
Good evening. My name is Ebenezer.
Hi, Ebenezer. Please let's hear you.
I want to say a big thank you to your production team and all the wonderful men who are out there
Thank you.
giving us the excitement. Please, this is my question. I've been married for 5 years.
Okay.
I have my wife also works and we have twins. And at the end of the day, she tells me that she wants to go and work so that she can help the house. At the end of the day, she started working, but there is no support. And she works and she doesn't support financially. I have to do everything. And I'm very, very young. There's a lot of things. I'm very, I'm messed up. I'm very, very confused. And I'm also thinking of a church. Having those back and forth, just trying to open up your marriage in public because you are also a leader, this whole thing is breaking me down. I want to ask your panelists how they can help me figure out how can I talk to my wife to kind of also support financially in the house since the burdens are very, 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 very more. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Eben. So I think what Eben wants to know is that, I mean, he's been married for 5 years, as he said, and there's been a little change in the job of the wife, and he's perhaps also in his aspect as well, and he thinks there's the burden all falls on him, and he wants to be able to speak to the wife to also begin to support. He doesn't believe in going out there and sharing his problems, to the outside, especially when he's also a leader at church or something. So if I got Eben, I'm sure Eben, this is exactly what he asked. But let me pick this call also, and then we can put two together. Good evening, caller. Your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, my name is Edmund.
Sorry, please come again.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Edmund.
All right, please let's hear you.
Please, I have my girlfriend. We've been together for 4 years.
You've been together for 4 years.
He has what?
Yeah.
Girlfriend.
A girlfriend.
I said I have my girlfriend. We've been together for almost 5 years.
Almost
And
5 years. Okay.
What does
any small thing, she always yes. And
Okay, there seem to be some issues there. I mean, if you can kindly call back, or if you can send us a message, it's 02022222054. You can send us a WhatsApp or a text message, and we'll be able to put that through. So let's come back to Eben's issue.
All right. So if I understand, or if I understood him correctly,
Yeah.
they've been married for 5 years. Of course, they were doing well, but then over a period, his job changed. The wife's also job changed a bit.
There's been a change somewhere, and
know.
there's too much burden on him, and he wants to be able to speak to the wife financially to support.
Okay. So currently, I take it from that submission that they've not. Okay. Sorry.
There's a call. Let me hope that it's
okay.
the one we couldn't pick. Good evening, caller. Your name and where you're calling from. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, we can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Teresa. My name is Teresa. I'm calling from.
Okay.
I think with my husband. My name is Teresa. I'm calling from Kaswa.
Hi, Teresa from Kaswa. Please let's hear you.
I've been married for about 30 years.
For about 30 years.
Yes, and then my husband. My husband always accused me for my past. That I told him. Yes, he accused me for my past relationship. Spoke to him,
Okay.
and because of that, he started verbally abusing me. Because of that, I decided to walk away from the family after the marriage, because it has been going on for 20 years. So in case of this, what do I do? What I should do? Because it's getting more confident. It's up to my feet, and I can't help it anymore. Our children are also grown. So I don't think I should stay in the relationship with that. Even if the Bible says we shouldn't be divorced. Just fed up.
Wow. Interesting. All right. Thank you so much for the call. I'm sure Benny and Isaac heard you. Or maybe I should reiterate what she said. So she's been married for 30 years.
I didn't get it.
Yeah,
And
aspects
so
were
she's
not
been
true.
married for 30 years. And I mean, in recent times, the husband has been using her past. Perhaps during the time they were in a relationship, some of the things that, to speak against her too many times, and it's getting out of hand. And she's actually considering leaving the marriage. After all, their kids are grown and all that, what should she do? How should she go about it? So remember, there was one we're trying to solve. So let's add it. There's another one here. I'll add it, and then
Okay.
we can solve all three.
All right. So maybe I started on the first one
Yeah.
regarding the job changes.
Yes.
I think really, you see, conditions will always change. Nothing is permanent. And if your wife might have lost a job and the weight is on you, have that discussion.
Yeah.
I think what is broken, as per what is that he's not been able to talk to. Because he's questioning, how do I talk to
No,
my
I
wife?
think that the wife now is working and is capable of financially support.
But she's not.
But she's not.
Yes.
Oh, that's what, okay.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
All right. So I think in that regard, once again, then they must have the discussion. All right. Because it's ideal. See, sometimes, and maybe let me say this also to the defense of men. Usually I will speak for women as well. But I think that there are too many of our women today who still have the mindset that if I work for me, it's mine. But the man's work and
It's
bringing
for
is for us.
Yeah.
And even when I see the man struggling, I must hold on to. Sometimes the advices are coming from sometimes the external influences. Permit me, I know you don't have much time, to share the short story. So there's this gentleman who shared a story recently about same situation. The wife was doing menial jobs. Apparently, she's gotten some increase on the job, and she had maintained that things are not going well. So the man was bearing all the weight. Now, over a period, he decided, let me help this woman. So he bought her a car so that she could also at least stop struggling through stuff. To cut the long story short, later on, he discovered that this woman actually had been making money. And the family has been influencing her to buy a land, start building, and they've been doing that. So one day he chanced on the wife's phone, you know, when someone was calling, the wife was not in the room. So upon doing that, it was the dad, and then the call ended. Then when she clicked, the message was, I've sent you a WhatsApp check. It was when he checked, there was a family group WhatsApp page and the information there. Not knowing this woman had bought a car for the driver, built a house. The father is the project manager for the house. And this man was suffering. When he confronted the wife, he lied blatantly. So the family came in and he started pouring out the evidence. So it was at the point where the father cannot deny it, the mother cannot, she herself cannot. But the guy said, I've had it. And I think the mindset of families' influences, you know, I think it's a very devilish mindset.
Yeah.
We should be encouraging our women to support the men if they have the means to. And that's for me one of the things. So speak to the woman. If she doesn't, once again, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. If there are people you can pull in to be able to help do that. As a pastor, I will encourage, if you go to church and you have a pastor, you go to the same church, even if a different church, you can speak with an elderly person to pour out. There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
But I will advise, please don't go quickly to your family, because you might forgive the woman over a period, but the family might not, and it might destroy the relationship.
Doc, let's try to help the woman, and we'll use that as a wrap up. I think what we'll do is that we should come back and have a much more deeper discussion on this, and so we have to do a part 2 on this, right? We all agree, right? All right, so let's tackle the woman's issue.
Yeah, I think that this proves that it doesn't matter the length of years you'll be married.
And it actually proves the point you made about how there is even divorce within the first 3 years, but it probably
later.
suffices after
So
30 years.
I'm sure this thing has been happening, or you know, I think they should just talk to someone,
Yeah.
right? They should talk to. I don't think. I think someone focusing on your past is not a major issue for divorce, right? I think that there should be some discussion, especially with someone who can help.
Okay.
So that if that is the most distressing behavior, I think that we should be able to find out why this man keeps doing that.
Yeah.
And find a solution to that. I don't think you can build something for 30 years and just pass issues.
Yeah. Past
It
issues
should be enough
make it.
to dissolve the marriage.
You build past
Yes.
issues for 30 years as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Anyway, so this is where we're going to draw the curtain, and we all agree that next week we'll come your way with this a part 2 of this particular discussion. There seems to be more that we need to be discussing. So thank you, Doc. Thank you, Reverend. And my name is Dr. Nanaya Odare. All right. So Reverend. So I am Reverend Dr. Nanaya Odare. Yes. So before you go, I have a surprise for you. I like the fact that it's a Thursday and tomorrow is going to be Friday. And so I have this coupon This is coming from Cheesy Pizza.
Oh,
Go there
wow.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Sorry.
For the weekend. Get
Wow.
something nice from them. Send it home. I'll call your wife and ask them.
Okay.
Somebody may fear. I'll know.
Okay.
So this is
No, not a
my
problem.
gift. This is my gift for the weekend.
Thank
And it's
you.
coming from Cheesy Pizza.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do they do
So
deliveries?
when you go, you find out.
Maybe you should call them.
Yeah, you should. I
Call
mean,
them
you can.
ahead.
Yeah, make the call.
Yeah.
You just might get it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Great
So
one.
this is for your weekend.
You're great.
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank
We'll
you.
do another good episode next week. Right? We'll continue this. And I just might decide to take you out of this place to a different realm.
Oh,
All right. Thank you also for watching. Thank you for being part of our evening. The COVID is still in the corner. Please protect yourselves. Very, very important. Those of you who don't have the vaccines, please get vaccinated. It's also equally important. Thank you so much for being part of our evening. We'll see you next week.